Hello beautiful beans, today we are going to be doing a studio diary of sorts as I block print some tees for the very first time. I've had these yellow tees and black totes stored away that I had ordered while I was in screen printing class at uni, and I've been itching to find a way to create something with them. I was considering hand painting them as I've done in the past, but that is really time consuming, although it is really fun. So instead I had the idea to carve and stamp a design on these tees instead. I wanted to create something that felt inspired by spring, nature, caring for our environment, but is also a bit whimsical and magical. Because if it isn't also whimsical and magical, did I make it? Probably not. I don't know whose work that is. So what I settled on was this idea of cultivating magic that really excited me. I wanted to explore this sense of stewardship and care and excitement towards your environment, community, and self, which is really wholesome and important, but also kind of explore a more fantasy and escapist idea that often pops up in my work, where I'm kind of by myself on another planet, or in an alternate version of Earth, and the flowers are very tall and giant animals are my best friends. And the two ideas kind of do conflict a little bit, but I guess I'm just trying to manifest the world I want to live in. Not that I want to be alone in the world. Anyway, so let's have a look at what I did with that. Over the past couple weeks, I've been sketching out some ideas in my sketchbook, which you have seen, and I've been slowly developing my designs. So I needed one design for the t-shirts and the totes, one for a bumper sticker, and then one for a little bookmark that will act as our test design to get a feel for block printing. Right now, I'm trying to get this design onto my rubber block to carve. If I had a printer, this would be a relatively simple process, but because I don't, I have to take a few extra steps. So after tracing my design onto tracing paper, I need to transfer the sketch onto the rubber. At first, I'm trying some soft willow charcoal. Yes, this charcoal. Okay. Which I very confidently went straight for, but after gingerly placing my design onto my block and tracing the design with a felt tip, I was just left with a bit of a smudgy mess. I tried tracing with a ballpoint pen instead, and while the result was okay, it was all still pretty muddy, so I wiped everything clean. I tried again with oil pastel, which you can see a bit of the blue of, but it just wasn't going to transfer. It's not loose enough at all. Maybe chalk pastel would work, but definitely not oil. So finally, I used a pencil to both cover the back of the tracing paper and to trace my design. This worked pretty well, but I didn't want to have to do any guesswork while carving because there's enough to think about, trying to focus on carving and following the lines. You want your lines to be ready to follow, So after going over everything again with marker, I know, just wait until you see how big the shirt design is, and I'll have to draw that one many times as well. It's now time to carve.
Wow!
So I'm starting with the smallest gouge I have, which is a little V. I just got this little pack of one handle and multiple blades just because it was the most affordable. And after starting by doing some test shaves just in the blank space to get a feel for the tool, I start outlining all of my shapes. And please don't judge my technique. Because I'm using a thick rubber block rather than hard lino, I felt super safe just rotating the block as I kept the gouge in the rubber and just kind of minimally maneuvering it for the most part. And I found that helped me get really smooth lines around the many curves of my design. But because I was doing this and also trying to film, I end up twisting the gouge in all sorts of positions, including towards myself and my other hand, which I'm guessing, not supposed to do, kids. So please do not use this as your carving technique tutorial, please. Especially not if your carving surface is any harder than a soft, floppy, thick piece of rubber. Okay, please, thank you. Okay. So continuing to outline my little friends, I feel like this design is a pretty intricate design to do for my first carving. It's actually more intricate than my final t-shirt design just because of the scale of it, but what's new with me? Go big or go home, I guess. And slowly I just chip away at knocking out the negative space using the little tool for a lot of it because I was really apprehensive to move to the bigger tools in case I would accidentally chip away something I didn't want to. But it turned out pretty cool. That's how it was looking. Scritch, scritch.
You getting this in record?
Yeah, I'm getting this beautiful music.
This beautiful music.
So we are back for day 3 and it is time to test print this little carving. I'm just using cheap acrylic paint for these initial tests and a hard roller that my housemate Joelle has. Slowly building that coverage and doing a test print on this old Smiggle calendar. I experiment a bit with how consistency impacts the print, but I'm also keeping in mind that for the real deal, I'll be using oil-based inks, not acrylics. I'm also testing out these cheap kids foam rollers that are going to hold a lot more ink than a hard roller. I'm also trying out a color combination that no one asked for, brown and silver. I wanted to explore using multiple ink colors in like one printing and also just see how these foam rollers would stack up. I put a piece of boxboard under an offcut of a t-shirt and was very generous with the paint, and oh my goodness, it turned out so much better than I thought it would. But you know, with the fabric, the noise was a lot more noticeable just because of the softness of both the rubber and the fabric, so they squish together really easily and the fabric can get into more of the crevices than paper could. So I kept a mental note to carve deeper for the real thing, but overall I was pretty happy with how it was coming out, and the foam rollers were definitely better for the fabric than the hard rollers. Like kind of mottledy, like, what's the word you said? Mottled? Mottled. Mottledy. But I don't know that it's a bad thing. Okay, so now we have to pick colors.
Why did you say you didn't like the black?
I don't know, I just I feel like it's maybe too harsh, or if it's a real subtle forest green.
Yeah, that's nice.
Ooh.
I really like that. I really like the purple. I like everything
Me
except
too.
for the brown. I like the brown.
I actually quite like the brown.
I like the brown.
But then it does feel quite different from everything else.
Cute, sexy, and my right, sporty.
Vroom, vroom. Anyway, we'll come back to that. I really needed to just clean up and finalize the sticker design so that I could send it off to get printed while I work on bringing the tees to life. So I'm using Procreate and my iPad to bring all my designs into their final form. I, again, wanted everything to feel both grounded and kind of ethereal. So my subject matter has kept to, jumbo-sized critters and plants with happy faces. And in the t-shirt, this little figure who is an ode to a younger me is nurturing this friendly flower with more magical stars and sparkles. I find that in my work, I often explore kind of feelings of being baby and youth and naivety. And I guess just like simpler times, when you're a kid. And at first I was considering filling the design with animals and plants that are native to so-called Australia, where I'm currently living. So like echidnas and kangaroos, wombats, platypuses. But because I didn't grow up here, I don't actually have a very, deep connection with these critters. And so I decided to instead keep the animals and the plants I included very broad and general, if animals could be broad and general, like international, Mr. Worldwide. Like most countries have some sort of species of frog and butterfly, caterpillar, snail, mushroom, flower, and their own like native or indigenous species of frog, caterpillar, snail, mushroom, etc. So I thought that was kind of like a bit more fun and hashtag relatable. And I just wanted this design to feel like open to you being able to feel like that's you kind of frolicking in this little garden. I'm again tracing with a thick felt tip that doesn't require much pressure at all, and because I'm going to have to trace it again after this, I'm not being too precious. It's just important that everything is in the right place. Whee! After tracing the design, I'm covering it with hard charcoal this time, and I'm just trying to focus on the areas with design on it to make my life easier. I'm then smudging the charcoal in with my fingers so it isn't as loose, because this soft rubber is really easy to mark, so I didn't need anything that was too fluffy. And you'll notice that I didn't trace the design backwards, so I flipped it over and traced the design with a pencil. And I'm again not being too precious about this because I'm going to have to trace over this again. So it's again just about getting that key placement right. Now I'm amping up that contrast and clarifying everything. Oh gosh, I can't wait to get a printer. And I started with an HB pencil, but I ended up switching to a 6B pencil, which was a lot easier to use and a lot darker as well because of the softer lead. And then I went for a walk and then came back and finished filling everything in over some Squid Game so that I would have everything ready to carve tomorrow. And by tomorrow, I mean today, because it is day 4, baby. I'm starting with my smallest tool to outline everything, and this is going to take a hot second, so let's talk materials. So I mentioned I'm using a thick, soft rubber carving block rather than hard linoleum, and the reason for this is because it's much easier to print on fabric with it because of its pliability. And because the block is so thick, you can actually use both sides. I mean, I haven't done that yet, but apparently that's how they're marketing it, and it's not very expensive to buy either, so. The one that I'm using is called the Renoir Easy Carve Block. Let's go. A similar product is the Speedball Speedy Carve, and a huge shout out to Ellie from the channel Ice and Sea. She has a whole channel all about liner printing, and I found her video where she was stamping some totes with a cute little mushroom design, like super helpful. And she recommends the pink Speedball Speedy Carve block. And she also recommended the Speedball fabric block printing inks, which is what I'll be using as well. So thank you so much, Ellie, for sharing your experience and expertise. Before carving the letters, I'm going back in and studying them a bit better to give them a sturdier outline. So while I knew I wasn't going to get anywhere like close to the original font since I'm carving it, I just wanted to give myself as sturdy of a base and foundation as I could within my time frame. I knew doing my signature would be a bit tricky. It's definitely the most tightly detailed part of this whole design, and it got super muddy in the tracing, so I sketched it out again on another piece of paper, redrew in the key lines, and then I just made some simple cuts. Like, it just had to look roughly like the shape of my signature, and it didn't have to be, you know, exactly perfect. Now with a big U-gouge, I am trimming off the edges just to kind of take away some of that tension and make it easier for me to chip away at all the negative space, which I start doing with a deep V-gouge, which I really enjoyed using. That's like a weird way to put it, but even though it's like a big V shape, because it's a V, you can get into some really tight spaces and actually make some really small cuts with it, so that was nice to know. This was definitely the most laborious part, and it didn't help that I was quickly losing focus. I mentioned time frame before, so pretty much I was working every day for this week to complete the bulk of the production of this project, and that includes printing. So because of that, I needed to carve the majority of this design in one day, which is not only ambitious because of the size of the carving and me being new to doing it, but it was also just not ideal. You know, it's physically tiring to be carving, and it also requires a lot of focus, which, you know, we all need to take breaks no matter what we're doing, no matter what we're focusing on. So I tried to take breaks by doing other work, but in the end, I still needed to spend the majority of my day doing this. And I worked through the evening, again, watching, listening to Squid Game, and I definitely made quite a few mistakes throughout my whole carving process because of my fatigue. But we powered through, and the next day with fresh eyes, I cleaned up the faces with this little like knife blade, and I went over the whole carving with some charcoal to see what still needed to be carved away. with that, it is test printing time. So I'm using the oil-based fabric inks and testing on paper and scrap fabric to see how they act. And I'm also seeing how these cheap foam rollers will work with the ink. Initially, the payoff on the fabric was a bit shy, but I was generally pretty happy with it. So I moved on to printing some bookmarks with my first design. After cleaning the stamp, I'm using my fabric test as a reference for what more I need to carve away. Okay, so now to prep our printing surfaces. I'm ironing the surface of the tote or t-shirt that will be printed and then inserting a piece of boxboard to give a nice flat surface to print on. I'm using an A3 piece of boxboard for the totes just because I think I can pretty easily eyeball the center of the tote. But for the tees, I'm taking a lot of care to place an A4 piece of boxboard exactly where I want the print to be, and then I'm carefully folding and stacking them into a cute little tower. And with all my surfaces prepped, it is time to print. Okay, let's go. So the final print color I settled on was brown. Wow, what an incredible reveal. But because I doubted myself so much about printing in brown, I didn't buy brown ink, so I'm making one myself instead by just combining all the colors of my other inks. And I'm starting to build up the ink on the stamp with some paper tests. I'm flipping the stamp onto the paper rather than the other way around because this is how I'm going to have to do it on the t-shirts. So I wanted to, practice my aim and get used to doing this. Okay, so now the real deal. I am inking, I am printing, pressing, lifting, and here's how the first one turned out. Okay. It actually doesn't look that bad, but at the time I was actually pretty displeased with this result. There was just too much noise in important focus areas of the design, like in the faces. So after thinking on it a bit, I cleaned the stamp and did more carving. And I did use the one t-shirt that I felt I could keep and not sell as my first printing because of this exact reason, like things might not go right. So it's all good on that regard. But the way that the print came out made me really second guess, or rather like fifth guess, 6 millionth time guess the color choice. I was like, does it just look muddy? Like, does it just look like this t-shirt fell in mud? So I really wanted to warm up and lighten up the brown ink a bit more to feel more in harmony with the warm shirt. Okay, round 2, let's go. Does that ink look purple to you? Because that ink looks purple to me. I think because I mixed the brown ink myself, the print looks different colors in different lighting. So sometimes it looks warm, chocolatey brown as intended, but other times it looks gray to even deep purple, and all just like on the same print of the same shirt. So I didn't mean to create a multicolor optical illusion t-shirt, but here we are, I guess happy accidents. And while doing these kinds of practical arts processes can be really relaxing, this printing process was so stressful. I've come to realize that fabric printing, at least in the DIY ways that I was doing it, is pretty unpredictable, and I think from this experience I learned a lot. Overall, I need to work quicker, and I definitely need to keep my ink wetter for more consistent results. So my ink was just like sitting there in the sun. I should have mixed a batch and then maybe kept it in like an airtight container and then took it out as I needed it, and I didn't have anything that I could thin it with, being an oil-based ink. So that became a real stressful point. And I don't think I got footage of this, but I actually later on, a couple days later, tried to create some art prints from this stamp and using the leftover ink that I had from this printing day. And by then the ink was just super thick, and I was not able to get a single print that I was happy with, that I would be comfortable selling. And I used up pretty much all of my nice expensive watercolor paper, and that's okay, you know, like this was my first time doing this process and things are bound to go wrong or not as you expect, so it's all good. Now I know that I really need to get an ink extender or something similar so that I have control over the consistency of the ink, and I think I would have been able to achieve a more, you know, pristine print on the fabric as well. And with the totes, this was a much less stressful process because again, getting the placement right on these totes was so much easier, and I only had 4 of them to do. I was a bit nervous about how the silvery purple color would come out, but it looks so gorgeous. It's like nice and subtle in low light, and then in the sun it really like pops and glitters. And I wanted the tees to feel more like playfully earthy, and the totes to be a bit more of the ethereal, magical side, which I think the metallic purple on the black captures really nicely. So I'm glad I backed myself with those colors. That being said, and with all that printing done, I am so exhausted. That was really like physically involved. I mean, like I usually sit at a desk and design the whole day or draw, so it was refreshing to do this, but it was also exhausting and intense. So while these lovely garments cure for a week, it is time to move on to those finishing touches. So I have all these really funky, bright, colorful plastic beads that I've kept since I was a kid. So they've been with me since I was in primary school in Aotearoa, to high school in Singapore, to uni here in so-called Australia, and I've been itching to make some keychains with them. I thought this would be the perfect opportunity to do that and add some color to the totes. So I'm using this pack of lobster clasps and keyrings and some doubled up embroidery thread, and I'm just kind of vibing out and creating a little nature story with beads as I watch, or more listen to, the new My Little Pony movie. These two activities really went together very well. So I've got things like a little mushroom to say hi to, butterflies and flowers and leaves all nestled together, this little caterpillar to haunt you while you sleep, all that good stuff. And so all of the keychains have the same basic pattern, but each little dangly friend is unique with a subtle color theme and some special beads that I only put in each keychain, if that makes sense. And I adore how these turned out. Each tote comes with a little dangly friend, and I've got mine on my keys, and it looks so cute. Again, I don't have a printer, so I can't make little tags for these tees, so instead I'm just lovingly adding a few beads on a safety pin and then looping that through each size tag as a nice little finishing touch. And with that, I trim the bookmarks, took some product photos, edited them, the stickers arrived, yay, and I built the product pages on our web store.
Can you press shift for me?
Thank you. How do I do a gallery? This one? Oh. There we go. That's better. So then all that was left was to launch. I mean, that was a very abbreviated version of another whole week's process, which I did in between doing like my other work and in my own time. I did early access a week early for my Chickpea Patreon supporters, and then I dropped it publicly just on the past Sunday and celebrated it with a little clay making stream, which was super fun despite the technical difficulties. I cried. How do I open this? Oh, here. Oh, can you hear the rain? Maybe while I speak. It is going off. Hi, unboxing. Oh, camera froze. Hello. Uh-oh. If you would like to check out more photos of the t-shirts and the totes and the stickers, and if you would like to get one yourself, you can check them out over on clubscene.online/shop. A huge thank you to all my Patreon supporters, and a super special shout out to Amina for their chickpea patronage. If you enjoy what I make, consider supporting me on Patreon. Not only will you be supporting me directly, but members of my Little Legume Club also get rewards like a fresh phone paper. A phone paper? Like a fresh phone wallpaper every month, exclusive video and behind the scenes content, high-res files of my art, merch discounts, and more. I will hopefully see you all for a new video. look at this, it's a YouTube video. I finally made one again. Very, very soon. And don't forget that I live stream every single Sunday at 10 a.m. AEDT. So I'll see you all this Sunday for a very spooky Halloween edition of Make Me an Art, where I take your suggestions and I make some drawings, live stream styles, and we hang out and have a lot of fun. So I'll see you all then. Thank you all so much for your support, for your love, and for watching. I'll see you all next time. Bye. Stay safe. Sending love.
You recording?
Yeah.
You're recording?
Recording.